Hello, and welcome to The Mohit Show. In this video, I'll be covering posts from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. On to this video's first post, titled, I can't live like this anymore, but I don't want my mom to suffer even more. This is by a detrans female. I'm a 17-year-old girl with a flat chest, a deep voice, a visible Adam's apple, and some facial hair. There's no reason for me to continue to live. I destroyed my life, and I feel like all hope I have is stupid for me to have. I don't think any person will ever want to date me. Before all this, people were into me, but I destroyed that. Now no one is ever going to like me. There's nothing I can really do without getting reminded of my past and how much I miss it. I feel ashamed of what I did. I'm scared people will never let me do decisions on my own anymore. I was just a kid, and I would have needed someone to help me accept myself. But my therapist didn't question my transness. I can't stop thinking about the life I could have had. I also think about other people will now believe that there's something better than me. I love my mom. She's an amazing mom. She stopped me the first time from transitioning, but the second time she was also brainwashed, and sadly thought that when all these professionals say it's the right thing to let your kid transition, then it must be the right thing. She thinks it's all her fault, but it isn't. I want to kill myself, but then she will feel even more miserable. How could I kill myself and let her know that I want her to be happy? I'm 17. Why do I have to think about ending my life? It's too much for me to handle. There's no joy in my life anymore. Now from the comments, the moderator comments here, due to the distressed nature of the poster and how useless hotlines are to detransitioners, we'll be approving posts from people normally not permitted to post if they offer helpful advice or positivity. Next, a reply from someone who's questioning their own gender transition. None of this is your fault. You're putting no blame on your mother, an adult, for supporting you, letting medical professionals do this to you. Then why are you blaming yourself? Surely your mother is 20 plus years older than you. She's an adult and is responsible for taking care of you. You're a minor, a teenager. You were both lied to and manipulated. Your mother was obviously worried but relented, probably because of what therapists and doctors told her, because she wants you to be happy. You thought you had a medical condition because of what everyone around you, in real life and online, said. The only treatment that was presented was transition. You were too young to have developed the abilities to do your own actual research and to have been critical about what you were told by adults, by highly educated adults even. That's not your fault, but I'm so sorry for what happened to you. But life goes on. It really does. You're still maturing. Your brain is still developing. Facial hair can be permanently removed. Your Adam's apple may become less noticeable off tea. Anyhow, you can hide it with turtlenecks, scarves, and as you get older, it may bother you less. You can perhaps get voice training or just own it and correct people who misgender you based on your voice. You can get breast forms and eventually a surgical reconstruction slash implants if you want, but I would wait a couple years with that. I think some feminine clothing looks amazing and feminine on a flat chest. As you get older, you may not feel like you must have breasts. Finally, loads of people will be interested in being friends with you and date you. Of course, it might be a little harder, but there's millions of people out there in your age range. Some people into women don't care much for breasts. Plenty more people care more about personality than specifics of someone's body. You are worthy of love. You will be attractive to others. I felt pretty rough at your age and have at times since. I'm now twice your age. Things do get better. They really do. Once you finish high school, you'll have much more control of your life. That will not undo your experiences, but you will feel a lot better being able to decide on tertiary education or not, jobs, moving out, making your own food, making new friends as a young adult. You got this. And the original poster replies to this, "Hey, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. You're probably right with everything. But I tried to stop caring and I tried to accept my life as it is, but it's too hard for me. I feel like I'm allowed to take the easy way out now. I'm not strong enough anymore. Transitioning was already hard. Detransitioning is a whole new level, though. I can't describe how much anger I have inside me, but I feel like I'm not allowed to be angry at the professionals. I'm exhausted, to be honest. I just want to rest. I just want to stop my thoughts. I have way too many thoughts in my head. It's exhausting." And you are right that some people won't care about me having a flat chest. But still, I care. I don't want to have to explain myself. And breast reconstruction is never going to be the same as having my natural breasts. I love skateboarding, which I also cannot do at the time, and I think I would have to stop that when having breast implants. I don't know. My whole life, I was able to stay alive because I had a hope for a better future. But it never turned out that way, so I lost hope. But thank you for replying. I will continue to try, but I can't promise that I will succeed. And just to note, there are many more supportive comments after this. Now, a desisted female replies to the original post. "You are very young, and though life seems bleak right now, there's still so much you can do and experience and find joy in. Please don't harm yourself. Your mother will always prefer you alive. Adam's apple, flat chest, and deep voice included." And the original poster replies to this. "I know, but I don't prefer myself alive. I hate myself and my mistakes. I can't go to school anymore. I can't meet my friends anymore. I can't play video games anymore. Watching movies or shows isn't the same as it used to be. I can't go to places I was before all this without feeling like ass. I love my mom, but that doesn't help me make my life less miserable. I want her happy, but I want to kill myself." And this is by someone without a flair, so they're from outside the community. "Dear Clyde, I'm the mom of an 18-year-old currently on hormones, something I'm unable to prevent. Speaking as a mother, I'm sure your mom wants to have the best future possible. You cannot go back in time and change the past, but over time, I think you can reframe your transition and see it as something the medical profession, slash you, slash your mom, slash really all of society is enthralled with right now. It is so very attractive for a young person to be told your pain is valid and there's a medical solution to solve your pain and problems. Ultimately, I believe you'll make it through this tough time with wisdom and empathy forged from your current pain. Instead of thinking about big things like your future, try to make small goals, like going for a walk, trying a new video game, enrolling in an online class, etc. Reaching out to this forum is very healthy of you." And someone else from outside the community comments, "Hey, hey, hey, hold on. I'm a mom to a questioning teen, so please hear me when I say she will not hate you at all. The hardest thing about my child exploring gender has been that she never did this until she fell into a group of girls obsessed with both gender and making mental illness a personality. Losing my daughter to a bunch of online talking points designed to make me look like a bigot for doing anything but throw a rainbow parade is so hard. But it was love and fear of losing her completely that allowed me to step back and accept she has to do this her way. And it was likely the same for your mom. Deep down, I know this isn't her, but I'm sure many parents of legit trans kids feel that way. If my daughter went as far as you and then said she regrets it, I would want to know and support you. You were trying to discover yourself and despite some invasive procedures, have decided this is not you. That is all. You are not a disgrace or a failure or a burden. Your thinking is what we call sunk cost fallacy. You went this far, but you actually don't have to go further. Some changes back may take time, but you can work through that, which you can't do if you're dead. There's no way to kill yourself without passing all your feelings onto your mom. Every moment of my life will be tainted. Every happy day will be all the more sad because you weren't there. She wants you at peace and healthy. She wants you to see this crazy life through. You have barely begun. It's okay to regret and be upset about the choices you made, but if you die at your lowest moment, you have no chance at getting a best moment. Your mom knows you deserve the best. Please don't sit alone with these feelings a minute longer. I promise she wants to know and support you. And the original poster replies to this. Hey, thank you for taking the time and writing this. Thank you truly. I'm sure you're an amazing mother, and I really hope your daughter doesn't have to do the same as me. I will try and stay strong for my mom, but sadly, I have at least one thought of committing suicide every day. If this thought of suicide is coming in a bad moment, I'll be gone. But thanks for reaching out, as it really means so much to me that people care. I'll try to not give up, but it's hard. And in this comment thread, there's more than 100 more supportive comments here, which is very nice to see. But on to the next post. Titled, Just Figured Out Why I've Developed Gender Dysphoria. This is from a desisted female. Hi, I just need to vent and receive some support, because last time you've helped me a lot. Trigger warning, sexual abuse, suicidal thoughts. Please don't read if those topics are emotionally hard for you. I was 17, he was almost 26. We were on a 3-day-long educational event in a hotel. It was my first time this far from home for the nights without parents nor teachers/caretakers. There were some people my age, but most of the people were adults. After a day of lectures, it was an integrational event. We started to talk. He was really handsome and he seemed to share similar interests and seemed to be interested in my talk about high school. Funny, he graduated from uni years ago. My interests and so on. But he wasn't. All the time he had a effing rubber in his pocket. He only wanted to make me trust him and have S with me. It still hurts. I told him that I was alone in my room because my roommate would arrive next day's morning. He took me to a bar and proposed me a glass of wine. Legal drinking age in my country is 18. I agreed. When we finished, he wanted to propose me a second glass, but I refused because I already knew that 2 glasses of strong wine will make me completely drunk. But he insisted, so my stupid, naive younger self agreed after some time and began the tragedy. Yes, after the second glass, I got completely drunk. All my prudence had vanished. I started to drink everything that was accessible, a lot of wine and vodka. It was my first time being this drunk. He was still by my side, way more sober than me. He remembered that my room was empty. He picked me up, took me to my room, and had S with me. I can't consider it as R, because my drunk self wanted it. But I was getting really tired. It was so late at night, around 4 to 5 a.m., I told him I wanted to stop and go to sleep, but he ignored me. I was so tired and drunk that I simply fell asleep naked by his side. When I had awoken for a while, he was still there. I wished it to stop, but I knew that I couldn't do anything, and I needed to patiently wait. Finally, my roommate arrived and forced him to leave. I awoke for a breakfast around 3 hours later with a painful and bleeding vagina. Yeah, it was my first time. I couldn't fully focus on lectures, even if they were about my autistic special interest. The next evening, we repeated it. A lot of alcohol, empty room, and S with him. I don't know. Maybe I wanted to justify this thing that I've done in my mind and feel more comfortable with it. But it was far from pleasant. We started dating and we were in a toxic, stressful relationship for 2 to 3 months. Luckily, it was long distance. It was a time in which I have completely changed. I started to drastically move to right wing because I felt safer among traditionalists believing in sex after marriage, etc. I was trying to be radically religious, even if I couldn't, and I felt uncomfortable with practicing religion. But otherwise, I would basically kill myself. In Catholicism, suicide is a mortal sin, so at least I had some reason to try to live. I've met a radically conservative, deeply religious nationalist boy who, despite his patriarchal beliefs, pointed my current partner as abusive. He helped me to break up with that 26-year-old who was trying to ruin my life and my next relationship after this. He was aggressive, but only through text and because he was far away, and we started dating. I loved that my boyfriend wasn't looking at me only as a sexual object as my ex. To be honest, I didn't want to be considered as a sexual being at all. Ironically, it was the time when my dysphoria started to rise. Yup, in a perfectly religious, conservative girl. I was 18, trying to live after that event, and I realized that I was forcing myself to be a conservative. That it was just a coping mechanism and I no longer wanted to be associated with such hurtful beliefs as nationalism. I broke up with my BF, he realized that we have different beliefs and accepted it, and after some time, I radically changed to woke. Yup, I wanted to be accepted for being me, for wanting education instead of being a very young wife with children. I wanted to embrace myself as bisexual or lesbian for some time because male bodies in sexual contexts were triggering me and I thought that I was a lesbian, but I'm just a traumatized bisexual. My dysphoria was strong, so soon I started to identify as trans slash binary, non-binary, I'm sorry, surrounded by people validating it. Being a tomboy earlier and autism in a stereotypically boyish shape with feeling of strong tension experiencing gender dysphoria earlier weren't helping. I'm so happy that I've realized that I'm not really trans just before possible hormones. And it's such a relief, because taking hormones or surgery would have made me even more traumatized and miserable. I would never feel good in my body after then. And now I'm feeling just okay in it. And I finally know that it was all my trauma and it's common in females after sexual abuse to experience gender dysphoria. I still have problems with sex. I still need to go to a sexologist with it, even though they're so strong, even if I don't know if it was really abuse or if I was just stupid. But I hope things are going to be okay. Well, I also have to say, I'm trying to, censor S sometimes because I know YouTube is sometimes weird with that, but yeah, I did let it slip a few times, so I think I'm just going to continue with that. Now, from the comments. Desisted female. I appreciate you sharing this. It must have been difficult to write. I also have a history of sexual assault, beginning in childhood and then in my teen and young adult life. It's been difficult to separate sexuality and sexual assault from both my gender presentation and my feeling of wrongness with my body. If I was masculine presenting at the time of a sexual assault, I'd start to present femininely. And I think that was because I needed the companionship and safety of women, and looking like them meant being included. However, presenting femininely made me feel very vulnerable to objectification, which might lead to sexual assault. It caused a static state of shock and a feeling fake for me. Look like the women around me, but feel alienated because they're so pretty and I'm gross, or look masculine, or risk being viewed as a lone wolf, ergo prey to predatory men. I recommend journaling with a pen on paper with complete honesty, even if you have to burn the pages. Over time, it reveals so much about ourselves and eventually leads to self-acceptance, which for me meant accepting my natural body. Someone who detransitioned also comments, so sorry about all that trauma. Oh boy, yeah, fundamentalist religion is exhausting. I get what you mean, especially Catholicism. Honestly, don't listen to those trad cats. I experienced dysphoria after a long time of alt-right brainwashing. This is one thing people don't see in trans females is that trauma is a huge contributor in some cases. Next post, titled, I miss so many parts of womanhood. This is from someone who's socially trans but regrets their medical transition. Hi everyone. I don't want anyone to think poorly of my parents, doctors, or anybody else because of my story. My choices were my own, and I don't regret them. I started hormones, testosterone. What? Wait. Then why did you have regrets medical transition as your flair? That's interesting. But anyways, I started hormones, testosterone, when I was when I was just about 16. I was really happy for a while passing as male. It was great. Then I don't know. Things slowly then quickly changed. I mulled over what that I might be non-binary for years, changed my name to a gender-neutral one, and started using gender-neutral pronouns. Then, quickly, something snapped. I missed so many parts of womanhood. Not this stereotype. I know not all this is inherently part of womanhood, but I missed the girly parts. They made me uncomfortable before, but I'd love to go out and get my nails done now. I'd love to shop for cute dresses. I also miss being read as female above all else. I miss the feeling of a woman looking at me like I'm another woman. I don't know what I am now. All I know is that I'm crushed. I'm so far removed from womanhood. I was on T for 7 years and 4 months. And 4 months off, all I'm noticing is my period returning. I feel like I have no hope of ever feeling connected to womanhood again. Nobody will ever read me as female. I don't know why I want this all of a sudden. I was happy until I wasn't. Thank you for reading if you did. Not looking for anything but just some general support / advice would be nice. Now from the comments. A detransitioned male comments. As we grow older, a lot of underlying causes for dysphoria can drop away because you've grown and whatever issues may have been causing that feeling may have been solved by you as you've matured. It may very well be a sign that you're moving forward in life, even though you feel confused right at this moment. Being a female is not only in how people read you. I'm certain that with time you'll be able to connect with that side of yourself. It's only difficult right now because you've only just begun after spending a long time not having that interest. People here will certainly support you along the way, and I'll be hoping for the best for you. Now on to the next post, titled, Transition Increases Dysphoria. This is by someone who's socially trans and regrets their medical transition. When you transition, the dysphoria is multiplied by a very big number because you want to fit in 100%. Multiplied by 100,000. 100 million, sorry. Why is nobody talking about this S? From the comments. Someone who questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning. This is why I feel body dysmorphia may be getting mixed with dysphoria, or it's honestly lost together now. Like most surgeons will turn down work on someone with body dysmorphia because it most likely worsens their obsession. Like someone getting a nose job. But then they're more upset because their nose still doesn't look right. The issue wasn't ever their nose. It's how they perceive themselves. I just can't help but see this as extremely similar to some people receiving transition surgeries but then still being very upset to the point of suicide because none of it satisfied their perception of themselves. The surgeon should have never worked on these people. There should be a deep dive into their mental health and perceptions. And the disassisted female replies, Never transitioned, but I can see that as being true. I have a deep-seated self-contempt. I think my desire to transition has something to do with that. I just didn't want to be me anymore. If I could get out of being myself, then that would solve all my problems. I never liked my birth name. To me, that's the ugliest name imaginable. But everyone else in my life always said it was nice. I changed it in my 20s. Chose a name carefully. Seemed like the perfect name. And within months of changing the name, it started to take on the same ugliness my old name had. Like you said, it was never the name. As soon as I identified with the name, I mysteriously started to dislike it. Someone who questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning replies, Yeah, I can tell you. I hate my name too. It never sat right with me. I don't look like my name, but I never could choose another name. I just see myself as me. I feel like names are just for other people to identify me. It means nothing to my actual self. And the disassisted female replies, This is how I feel with names and pronouns and genders entirely. I'm uncomfortable with being seen a certain way or honestly at all, but there's nothing I can change about myself that'll improve that. A persistent female replies to the previous one about the name change. I had the same issue with my name. I tried to change it and get people to call me by my new name, but it didn't feel better. I finally found that if I liked the person and we got along, they could call me garbage and I didn't mind. My parents and siblings didn't want me. I was always a half sibling who didn't fit in, so they never said my name with any semblance of love. The most I got was a pleading sound that implied, leave me alone. Another disgusted female comments, damn, what a coincidence here. I actually had the same S with my name. Just hearing it made me physically hurt and nauseous back then. But the euphoria with my new one didn't last long either. Glad somehow the guy in the registry office was kind of intimidating, so I didn't go back there and, in the end, saved me some money. Anyway, seems growing up makes a mind go haywire. Now, detransition female comments. This literally happened to me. Has it resolved itself for you, or what have you done? I'm on my third name. First was birth name, second female to male name, and now I'm going by a third feminine name. I think I just hate being called by a name and feeling trapped by it. And the desisted female replies, I accepted it. After I recognized that it's me and not the name, I realized that changing it again would alter nothing. Not to mention, my husband was super supportive of the first name change, and he got used to it and wasn't happy at the prospect of having to get used to it again. I also took his last name. Now I'm a Chinese person with an Irish last name and a totally different first name. And I also can't identify with that. So now my name is a group of sounds and letters that points to me. I am me. My name is my name. Now a desisted female comments. Just jumping in here as I see this. Had a similar thing as I said above. So for me, it was actually talk therapy where I worked through all my self-hate and anger. Over time sorted it out. I somehow projected my whole negative self-image on that name. It stood for the dumb, ugly, clumsy, cringy, nerd, aspy failure of a girl that I thought I was. I learned to forgive myself and finally sympathize with this girl that was just hurt and never deserved it. But I'm not lying. It took years. What also helped me was eventually meeting another girl with that name. It ain't the most common name, so it took a while. She was nothing like me, went happily with her name, and loved that I had the same one. I found somehow it didn't seem all that bad on her for some reason, and that made me wonder why. And the desisted female replies, my name is really pretty, and the meaning is very special. It's very rare, and I've only met a few people with it. They've all been so beautiful and special in some way, while I'm not. I felt completely unworthy of such a special name. It felt ugly. I felt ugly, uncoordinated, and dumb compared to the people I met. One was a child math prodigy, another an award-winning dancer, so graceful, and one's a beautiful singer. Now, a desisted male comments on the original post. Physical alterations don't work for solving issues that exist purely in the mind. Transition should have never been an option to begin with. A detransition male comments on the original post. Yeah, I didn't try to transition long, but the entire time that I was moving towards transition and when I was actually trying it, I was completely absorbed by my concern about my gender and my appearance. I never felt that way before in my life, and it was entirely because I had internalized this new set of ideas about myself based on stereotypes and the idea that my body was wrong. It was gross. It's gross that this is encouraged. I didn't come to this mindset by accident out of nowhere. I was repeatedly led to think this way by communities that I was involved in. Not all of them were even transgender communities. Some were just leftist spaces. I was a hardcore left activist because of how I fell into the world of gender questioning in the first place. It sucks because now I have no idea that what I can safely believe or be a part of. And the detransitioned individual also comments. A friend of mine has body dysmorphia. Funnily enough, no matter how many plastic surgeries he has, he never feels better. Now, a detrans female with a CCSD comments, honestly does, but they justify it by blaming it on society's lack of acceptance for trans people, forcing them to feel pressured to pass. But it contradicts that most of them are thinking they'll become a certain image, or they should have a certain image. The more they fixate on it, the more they ruminate and take it means to handle it, it gets worse. When I first transitioned, I had discomfort, but it wasn't until I started actively binding and presenting as a trans boy slash trans man that the dysphoria ramped up to 1,000,000. And the more I felt pressure to blend in to just be seen and accepted as my true self, feeling limited by my physical body and thinking surgeries will make it all go away. Ironically, the fact that I refused to get involved in any trans communities was one big reason I managed to realize this when I first was denied surgery as a minor back in the late 2000s. That the goalposts would just keep shifting, and that there's no guarantee that any of these steps would alleviate my distress or make it better. Now, desisted female comments. I didn't transition, so I tried keeping it short. Just read such experiences umpteen times meanwhile. I think when your core problem actually lies elsewhere, you just carry your inconfidence with you and it'll settle on the next thing as you go. Also, your ever changing physiology might bring up new insecurities. Like trans men on T might get even more conscious of their breasts as they match their new male looks less over time. Just one thing leading to the next. It's certainly not trivial, and in my opinion, such decisions should thus be pursued only with appropriate risk awareness and caution. And the desisted male comments. The community encourages delusional transition goals, as well as pretending you will one day become indistinguishable from cis people if you just stick to it for long enough. Rather than set realistic outcomes, you're left chasing the next step. More hormones, more surgeries, until one day you make it or quit. You may hate yourself as a biological male slash female, but you are one. It's an effortless reality, even if you don't like or realize it. Trying to cram yourself into the shape of something you aren't born as will make you hyper aware of all your natural features. Trying to escape manhood just forced me to confront it even more. I knew I would have to crush my bones to pass, which can make you hate them more. On to the next post, titled, I feel like the only cis woman in my friend group. This is by someone who has desisted. Not sure if this belongs in this sub, but I'm not sure where else to post. I just feel sort of alone. In my family group and in general as regards to gender identity, I grew up in the LGBT community. Family was very chill with me IDing as bi, then lesbian, then bi again in high school. Now, I dressed pretty masked for a year or so in high school because I felt it matched my sexual orientation. I've seen a range of gender identities become more commonplace and accepted over the years, had good friends and loved ones come out and transition over the last several years. Lately, however, I feel this sort of sadness when almost every assigned female at birth friend I have has changed pronouns recently. I absolutely believe trans people exist, should be loved and respected, and allowed to transition and live as their true and best selves. I don't agree with turf logic as it often seems mocking and cruel, and that isn't what I'm about. I experimented with presentation myself over the years, and still do, though many would probably say it isn't as masculine as the majority. I had short hair for a long time, wondered if I wanted to be referred to it differently. but nothing other than she, her felt right to me. At the end of the day, I always felt like a girl, like a woman. When people use they, them for me upon meeting me, to be polite, I assume, it makes me uncomfortable. And I realize it isn't this way for everyone, but I'm starting to assume that my situation is a lot more common than people are willing to let on. I had realizations several years ago that it was risky to present too boyish, because people would automatically assume I was non binary, when it just wasn't the case for me and never was. I had and do have fun playing with gender in my own way, but I enjoy and am content being a woman. I realize so many people do need to use they or transition to male, but are starting to perplex me. So many assigned female at birth people around me will cite not feeling like a woman and use she, they, and they, she, and then eventually they, them, usually saying, don't want to be perceived as a woman, etc., etc. And it makes me feel insane. Like, don't they get it? You can be a woman who doesn't fit into a box. There's no wrong way to be. And in this, they'll say they hate men, reductive and rude to trans men, and in the same breath, say they're so uncomfortable with womanhood, which just makes me feel guilty and bad for wanting to be a woman. Makes me feel so weird that I'm nearly the only one left who has yet to add the extra pronouns. I realize other people's identities don't necessarily concern me, but I feel so alone. I feel like every time an assigned female at birth friend comes out, we don't have that core thing in common anymore. Suddenly, I don't understand their experience and they don't understand mine. Feels very weird and alienating. I just want some friends who are girls. I had this realization last year that I can just be, and it was so freeing. Girls can play around and be masculine sometimes. Girls can dress up and feel differently about how they present, and that's okay. It isn't some bigger thing to worry about. That's what's keeping me going. From the comments, a decised female comments. It's misogyny and internalized misogyny at work. And it's very, very sad and concerning. I came up in a very accepting environment too, part of the LGBT community, and always considered myself accepting of all gender identities. But now, having lived it, I see it for what it truly is. Young women and girls don't want to be female because in our society now, being female is seen as lesser. You're either weak-minded, over-sexualized object, or you're maybe even worse, a Karen. We're biologically getting the short end of the stick, as well as less physical strength in periods, etc. Then here comes this concept that tells young women that they can escape this, that they have the option to identify out of this. Of course, some of us are going to jump at the chance. I don't know what will remedy it, but I suspect more media that shows women as strong, interesting, and capable will help. Highlighting more of the things that are great about being a woman, because despite all the negatives shown around us, being a woman is effing awesome. And there's no one or two ways to be a woman. I hope more people start waking up to this soon. Comment from someone who's desisted. It used to be I could cross-dress or do activities that were boyish, and people still had no problem seeing my womanhood. And it was kind of a proud moment of like, hey, I can break the norm behaviors without needing to break who I am. But now it's like the oppression is back, and all the same, just in a different suit. So to speak, since now if I do those same things and wear the same clothes, people assume it must be denying my womanhood instead, or something and I hate it now. This whole movement has become the thing it vowed to destroy. Now, desisted female comments. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating to see those gender boxes getting ever narrower. This new in-group type thinking is what I find especially moot. Somehow, you're now only qualified to relate if you're also somewhere along the non-cis spectrum. Sure, it might protect some from discomfort, but it's also a hurdle to any meaningful exchange and insight that can help healing. I'm honestly glad for having grown up in different times where this zip it up and show respect mentality didn't exist. Otherwise, I'd been forever boiling in my own sad soup. I'm sure as hell back then I'd long have trans if it had been anything like today. Still, despite 20 plus years of ruminating gender crap, odd breakdowns, and ever gaining new self healing perspectives that help me grow steady by the year, suddenly I'm having a dumb, happy cis summer child that doesn't know S about dysphoria. Just for having concluded someday that a new identity or body's futile path for me and won't get me anywhere, and I'll have to do that sort of stuff in other ways. I'll have to sort out my stuff in other ways. Yeah, I do love that we have new diversity now and that we finally leave the olden days behind us, but at the same time, it all leads up to the ever growing obscuration and division, which makes me so sad. Anyway, sorry, original post, if that got too tangential. Edit. Also, also that stuff with the pronouns, it's kind of right here where I live these days. While in my opinion, it would be cool to have some non specific qualifier for everyone, it's currently going towards the opposite. Lately, people don't want to have pronouns at all. You're to use their name instead. But as my language is incredibly gendered, all grammar, endings, and articles and whatnot, you cannot now even form a regular sentence, but have to rebuild it in a convoluted way to allow for neutral, non pronoun grammar. Makes it quite a pain in the A to talk about anything and not do an oopsie. Yup, it's divisive. A desisted male comments, extra pronouns equals extra attention. Simple as. We're lonely as ever, and social media shows us how glamorous and popular we can be just by joining the LGBT community. Being cis is boring and doesn't get you any love, it's just a default. Slap a meaningless pronoun in your bio, and suddenly you're part of an exclusive club, full of members willing to get to know you and affirm you. Suddenly you're special and different to other girls. And desisted female comments, wow, you wrote the post I've been writing in my head for weeks. I, 30 something semi questioning cis woman, have been browsing this subreddit along with a lot of pro trans subreddits to try to get my head around my feelings about gender. I'm writing from a throwaway account because I have a lot of trans and non binary friends, and frankly, I feel guilty for how I've been feeling lately. Recently, a close assigned female at birth friend, who used to identify as a femme bisexual woman like myself, came out as non binary and has switched to they them pronouns. And I can't help feeling a profound sense of grief. I've always felt this grief to some degree when an assigned female at birth friend transitions because of that lost connection, like you said. But it's been particularly bad with this friend. They said the other day they won't be able to go to certain women's groups we have in common anymore because it turns out they're not a woman. It makes me sad. I have a lot of shame and trauma around my female body after a long history of sexual abuse, and even more shame around my feminine interests and stereotypically feminine traits. All my life, I've struggled to be taken seriously because I'm short, friendly, and femme. I hate it. I hate that anything associated with femaleness is written off as frivolous and unimportant. I've struggled with this my whole life and used to say all the time that I wished I was a boy or that I was too smart to be a woman. Ouch. I've turned that energy towards the fight for women's rights and feminist issues, especially supporting both women and men's ability to be as feminine or masculine as they damn well please, and still be respected and seen as equals. I have thought a lot recently about identifying as non-binary or agender, because that's how I feel on the inside. A genderless mind subjected to gendered experiences. I didn't ask, but after a lifetime of working to throw off my shame around femaleness, it feels vital to me to hold on to the word woman. So when my friends cast it off, I don't know. It hurts. On the other side, a few of my trans women friends have been expressing ideas about womanhood lately that make me so effing angry and uncomfortable. Things like, I'm just a silly woman, what do I know? It's said in a semi-tongue-in-cheek way, but it still triggers the hell out of me. I've also tried reading the book Detransition Baby a few months ago, which had a whole thing about the protagonist seeking out violence from male partners to affirm her womanhood, and reading that just broke me. I couldn't finish it. Reviews raved about how this empowering narrative written by trans women for trans women made me feel deeply sad. There's so much misogyny included in the depiction of the sole cis woman character, and it won the Women's Prize for Fiction. Ultimately, I care for trans people and their experiences. I believe transition is the right choice for many people. And no matter my personal beliefs, I will always respect other people's preferred pronouns. That's just basic respect. But the conversation around gender just seems so reductive and twisted, and I'm afraid that girls will feel forced to de-identify as women for the sake of being taken seriously and not sexualized or seen as frivolous idiots with a victimhood complex. I'm already feeling this pressure myself. There are days I think I should just go ahead and declare myself non-binary because cis woman seems to imply that I feel euphoria around every element of womanhood assigned to me, which I emphatically do not. Further, I want trans people to be safe and have the freedom to live their best lives, but I also don't want the conversation about women's experiences to be dominated by people who've lived most of their lives as boys or men. My feminism is not trans exclusionary, but it's also not centered around assigned male at birth trans experiences. That's feeling more and more like a dangerous position. Their perspectives are valid, but they are often very different. I want to be able to talk about this with someone, that's why lurking in this group, which seems to have some of the most sensible gender discussions on the internet. But I'm also a writer, and I'm genuinely afraid to have my social life and career sabotaged. I just feel so lost. Now on to today's last post, titled Socially Tra- That's not the title. One second, let me grab that title. Okay, that's better. So today's last post, titled How to Assume That There Is No Going Back. This is by someone who's socially trans and regrets their medical transition. HRT is not going well for my health. I can't leave her because I have SRS. The doctors were not honest with me. The trans people I heard were not sincere. My life is more difficult now. Why was I so dumb? From the comments, someone who's questioning their own gender transition comments, I'm sorry for what you're going through, but can you clarify this? I can't leave her because I have SRS. And the original poster replies, I can't stop chemical hormones because I have a vaginoplasty. And to note, that means that they will have to have synthetic hormones given for the rest of their life. Now, someone else questioning their own gender transition, number 2 here, asks, what did they lie about? This is one of my biggest fears. To which the original poster replies, doctors do not inform you enough about what hormone treatment entails. The trans people I've met are not honest about their transition. So the same person who's questioning their gender transition, number 2, says, my detrans friend said he saw a lot of people choose to transition because they felt like they didn't fit in with members of their sex. Before they transitioned, only to find themselves even more isolated before. The motivation for transitioning matters a lot. It's hard to find a complete list of side effects for some of the drugs. Spiro is a blood thinner with an anti-androgen side effect. That means you bruise more easily and your blood won't clot as well if you get hurt. It is also a diuretic, which puts stress on your kidneys, I think, might be the liver. On their sites, Plume and Folks only mention the anti-androgen effects. I see posts after posts of people less than 2 years into transition. They all seem quite happy and excited. But where are the people who are 5 to 10 years in? How many stay happy? I'm finally beginning to find posts about how gender euphoria becomes increasingly difficult to come by as transition progresses. It's like everyone's chasing a euphoria high. When the drug runs out, they find themselves wondering how it all went wrong. That's why I read these threads. I need to know the risks. I need to know what's causing people to transition and desist. And someone who's questioning their own gender transition, this is number 3 here, says, dude, the bruising. I'm going to speak only for a small part of your post here, but holy S, the bruising from Spyro. I'm off hormones for now for about 4 months, I haven't counted, but it's been a bit. It's off Spiro for longer than that. Holy S, the bruising was bad. I was black and blue all the time, and big bruises. People would tell me I should see a doctor for just for the bruises. Since I've been off it, I don't even remember the last time I had a bruise. I didn't even realize that that's the case. But there you have it. Thanks for the reminder. Now, this same person, number 2, questioning their transition, says, note to self, avoid Spiro. My uncle is on Spiro for his heart. For him, it's mostly needing to drink extra water, use the bathroom more, and treating every cut like a potentially fatal wound. That last one is enough to make me want to avoid it. Now, a desisted male comments, I didn't medically transition, but I can guess what they mean. A lot of doctors follow the affirmation model, which means they legally must affirm your identity no matter what. They cannot explore what factors have led you to want to change your gender, which may include body dysmorphia, trauma, social contagion, internalized homophobia, or other such factors. There are efforts to make this the only legal treatment in several nations. The model is already the standard in most US, Canadian, and Scottish clinics. The trans community is not a fan of the concept of detransitioners. Their current narrative around the care is that trans kids and adults know themselves best and should be affirmed at every stage by medical professionals. Detrans people throw that into question, so detransitioner statistics are not collected by transgender organizations, who may even try to suppress independent studies on detrans people. I actually made a video on that, which you can watch. The wider trans community preaches that a cis and fully transitioned trans person are indistinguishable. Therefore, the notion that treatment is causing problems is problematic in itself. Finally, there's an observable sunken cost fallacy with those who transition. Often, fear of shame can compel trans people to tell others that SRS went really well for them and that there were no big downsides. The embarrassment of realizing that you are now worse off can be brutal to admit. Some surgeons, like Kathy Rumer, have attempted to sue former SRS patients over bad reviews, so that's another reason for trans people to keep quiet. Now, the number 2 person questioning their gender transition comments. Thank you for your detailed reply. I, myself, as unmale at birth, have not transitioned, but have been seriously considering it. It has been very hard finding information on unsuccessful transitions online. I can't tell that that's because it's rare or because the information is being suppressed. I was recently introduced to a friend who detransitioned, male to female to male, and we have been talking about both processes. He firmly believes we're about to see a massive wave of people detransitioning because they are rushed in and regretted the decision. So I'm taking my time and asking questions. I want to make sure I exhaust my options before starting hormones. And next, by a desisted male, they say, it's great to hear that you'll consider arguments from both sides. Echo chambers aren't good for anyone. Your friend seems like a smart guy. The first detrans lawsuit hit the NHS in 2020. Now a class action one with hundreds of victims is in the works. I'm sure more will follow. But there's a real information suppression campaign against detrans people. Most trans subreddits consider this one a hate sub, and they even set up a honeypot sub r/actual detrans, run by trans people, to try and control what we say and control the narrative of surrounding us. Don't feel like you have to transition sooner rather than later. The long-term health impacts aren't known, and you might end up kicking yourself later, especially if you're still under 18. Wish you all the best. And that will be all for today. I'd just like to thank you all so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment below if you want to support this content. Thank you so much, and have a good day.